There is a particular kind of stillness that arrives after the day has finished with you. Not when you finish with the day, but when the day finally releases you, sets you down somewhere quiet, and moves on without ceremony. You find yourself standing by the window. You are not sure how long you have been there. The glass is faintly cold against the room's warmth, and outside the city or the street or the neighborhood continues its low, indifferent hum. Cars pass at longer intervals now. A light in a building across the way goes dark. Someone somewhere is also ending their evening, also moving through the small rituals of closing a day, and neither of you will ever know the other was awake at the same hour, standing in the same kind of silence. You did not choose to come to the window. You were not looking for anything outside it. You simply arrived here, the way you sometimes arrive at a thought without remembering how you started thinking it. Your hands are at your sides, or folded loosely, or holding something. A cup that has gone cool without you noticing. The warmth left it gradually, the way warmth often leaves things. You did not notice the moment it happened. You only notice now, holding something that is no longer what it was when you picked it up. The room behind you is quiet. Whatever sounds filled it earlier in the evening, the television, a voice, the ordinary sounds of a household settling into itself, have softened or stopped entirely. The quiet is not uncomfortable. It is simply present, the way furniture is present, the way the ceiling is present. You are aware of it the way you are aware of your own breathing. Not constantly, but in the moments when nothing else is demanding your attention. And right now, nothing is. You are thinking about nothing, or something close to nothing. Thoughts pass through without stopping long enough to become thoughts. An image from earlier in the day, a sentence someone said that did not seem important at the time and is not important now, but surfaces anyway. A small concern that floats up and then releases before you can hold it. The mind does this sometimes at the end of a long enough day. It empties, not cleanly, but gradually, the way a room empties when people leave one by one rather than all at once. You are not solving anything here. You are not processing. You are standing, and the window is in front of you, and the night is doing what the night does, which is continue without needing your participation. There is something faintly strange about that, about how completely the world outside keeps moving, while you simply stand and watch it move. Not strange in a way that troubles you. Strange in the way that certain true things are strange when you stop long enough to notice them. The light outside shifts slightly. A distant sound, a vehicle, a door, something ordinary, passes through and is gone, and you remain at the window, holding your cool cup, thinking about nothing, which may be the closest thing to rest your mind has found all day. That nothing has a texture to it, though. It is not truly empty. It is layered with everything the day deposited without asking permission. The meeting that ran past its end, the email you answered while doing something else, the task that remained half-finished when you finally closed the screen, the small friction with someone that never became an argument but left a faint residue nonetheless. None of it is loud enough now to call itself a thought. All of it is present the way weather is present, not as a specific thing you can name, but as a condition you are living inside. The day did not break you. Days rarely break people. They simply accumulate. Each one adds its layer, thin as paper, and most days you do not feel the layers, because you are busy moving through the next one. But sometimes, at the end of one, standing somewhere quiet, you become aware of the whole stack of them, not as a weight that demands attention, but as a fullness that makes stillness feel necessary. You went to work this morning. That sentence sounds simple, but it contains everything. The alarm, the slow return to waking, the decision to stand before you felt ready to stand, the coffee made in a kitchen that was not yet fully awake, the small preparations performed in the same order they are always performed. You have done this enough times that the body knows the sequence before the mind does. Your hands find things, your feet move. Something in you that is neither thought nor feeling simply carries the routine forward. And then the day itself, hours of it, filled with tasks and faces and words and decisions, most of which will not be remembered by next week, most of which required something from you in the moment and released you without acknowledgement afterward. There is a particular quality to modern work that is difficult to name. It is not always hard, in the way physical labor is hard. The body is not always exhausted, but something is used. Some part of you that does not have a simple name is drawn on throughout the day, and by the end of it, there is less of that something than there was at the beginning. You felt this on the way home. The drive or the train or the walk, whichever it was, had a slightly muted quality, as though a filter had been placed over the afternoon. You moved through streets, you know, and saw them without quite seeing them. You arrived at your door without fully remembering the last few minutes of the journey. This happens on certain days. The automatic part of you takes over for the final stretch, delivering you to your threshold without requiring your full presence. Inside, the evening passed the way evenings do, with its small routines, its ordinary motions, its moments that require just enough of you to prevent full rest, but not enough to feel like living. You ate, or you didn't. You sat with something on a screen, you exchanged a few words with whoever was there, or you moved through the quiet of an empty space which has its own kind of conversation, one-sided and echoing and sometimes more comfortable than it has any right to be. And now you are here, at the window, having arrived at the end of the day's demands, without announcement or ceremony. The dishes are done, or they are waiting. The phone is somewhere behind you, face down or sleeping. The things that needed to be done have been done, or they have been quietly deferred to tomorrow, which will ask for them again without memory of asking before. There is no applause for any of this. There never is. The ordinary maintenance of a life, showing up, completing, returning, preparing to show up again, does not collect recognition the way visible accomplishments do. It simply continues. You continue. Standing here by the window, in the pause between today and whatever tomorrow will require, you are not thinking about this consciously, but the body knows it. The particular quality of your stillness knows it. The way you are standing, not tensed and not fully released. Somewhere between the effort of the day and the rest, you have not quite allowed yourself to reach. The night outside does not know any of this. The street light holds its steady glow. A leaf or a piece of something small moves along the pavement below. The city breathes in its sleep, indifferent and continuous, and you stand watching it the way you sometimes watch things that have no message for you but feel worth watching anyway. There is something specific about standing still after a day of being in motion that the mind does not immediately know what to do with. Movement has a logic. Forward, next, after this. Stillness has no such direction. When it arrives, the mind searches briefly for its next instruction and finds none, and in that small gap between looking and finding, something quieter surfaces. Not a revelation, not an insight that rearranges things, just a noticing, soft, without urgency, the kind that only becomes possible when everything louder has temporarily stopped. What surfaces tonight is not dramatic. It is simply awareness of being alone inside yourself in a way that the day does not usually allow. During the hours of work and motion and response, you are always in relation to something external, a task, a person, an obligation that requires your outward attention. The self that exists beneath all of that, quieter, less defined, without a role to perform, does not often get the floor. Right now, it has it. And it does not say very much. It does not arrive with complaints or demands. It arrives the way a person arrives at a table after a long time away, quietly, without expectation, simply present. You notice that you feel something that is difficult to name. Not sadness, exactly. Not loneliness, though some of its texture is present. Not tiredness, though you are tired. It is more like a kind of interior distance, the sense of being slightly further from yourself than usual, and only noticing it now, in the stillness when the gap becomes visible. The day does this. Long enough stretches of external demand will gradually move you away from yourself without your noticing the movement. You do not feel it while it is happening because you are busy. It is only afterward, when you stop, that you take a kind of internal reading and find the coordinates shifted. This is not a crisis. It is barely an event. It is simply a thing that happens. The mild drift that accumulates across full days, the slow way that sustained effort moves you incrementally outward, until the end of the day finds you standing somewhere quiet, slightly unsure of the distance between the person who performed the day and the person standing here now, watching the street. Most people never have a word for this. They feel it and move past it. They go to sleep, or they reach for their phone, or they start something else to avoid the unfamiliar quiet of their own interior. And there is nothing wrong with that. The quiet can be uncomfortable. The distance from yourself can feel like something that needs to be closed quickly, filled with noise or motion or distraction. But tonight, you are standing here. You are not filling it. You are letting it be what it is, which is simply a moment of your own life, unremarkable and undemanded, yours without condition. Outside, someone on the street below walks past without looking up. They are in their own motion, their own evening, their own interior weather. The window separates you cleanly, you in here, they out there, and neither one aware of what the other is carrying tonight. This is how most private moments work. They are invisible to the world moving around them. They happen in rooms above streets, behind glass, in the middle of ordinary nights, and they leave no trace that anyone else would recognize. But they happen. They are real in their own quiet way. The distance you feel tonight is real. The stillness you are standing inside is real. And the faint texture of something, not grief, not happiness, not resolution, that moves through you as you stand by the window is real, even if it never becomes fully nameable, even if it passes before morning without having arrived at anything. And yet the passing matters. Not because it leads somewhere, it does not tonight, but because it is happening at all. Because you are standing here, inside your own life, at the end of an ordinary day, and something in you is present enough to feel the texture of it, even when the texture is mostly quiet and mostly still and mostly without event. That is not a small thing, even when it feels like nothing. There is a version of adulthood that moves so fast it never creates these moments. It is always in transition, from work to obligation, to sleep to work again, and the window never gets stood at because there is always something next. You have lived parts of your life at that speed. You know how it feels, efficient, forward-moving, and slightly hollow in a way that takes a long time to identify because the motion itself disguises it. This stillness, even when it holds only the faint unease of your own interior distance, even when it offers no answers and no relief, is something that the fast version of your life would not have made room for. The mind does not know what to do with solitude at first. This is worth acknowledging. When the external scaffolding of the day is removed, the tasks, the roles, the constant soft pressure of being needed or watched or assessed, what remains is something the mind is not always practiced at occupying. The instinct is to fill it, to reach for a phone, for a voice, for anything that replaces the particular discomfort of simply being inside yourself without an agenda. But solitude, when you stay inside it long enough, begins to change quality. The discomfort does not always leave, but it becomes familiar, less urgent. The unfamiliarity of your own quiet company starts to ease. You begin to hear things that the noise covers, not dramatic things, not revelations, but small interior textures that exist in you continuously but rarely get airtime. The memory of something pleasant from a year ago that surfaces without reason, a preference you had forgotten you had, the awareness of your own breathing, which has been happening all day without your participation, faithful and automatic, asking nothing. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. This is something that takes time to understand, and most people arrive at the understanding gradually, through experience rather than through being told. Loneliness is an ache for something absent. Solitude is a condition of being present with yourself, and it carries its own quality that is not quite comfort and not quite discomfort, but something more neutral and more honest than either. Standing here tonight, you are not lonely. You are alone. The distinction feels important, even if you could not explain it to anyone right now. You are alone with the window and the street and the indifferent city and the cool cup and the room behind you. And this aloneness is not asking to be fixed. It is simply the shape of this particular hour. There is a kind of person who would look at this moment, this standing at a window, thinking about nothing, feeling the mild interior distance that accumulates across full days, and see it as a problem to be solved. Something to analyze, to improve, to address with action or habit or change. But you are not solving tonight. You are standing, and standing, when the world offers it, is its own kind of act. It is easy to underestimate how much of adult life is forward motion, always toward the next thing, always answering the next demand, always in the process of becoming whatever the next hour requires. The moments when the forward motion pauses are rare, and they often feel purposeless because they produce nothing visible. Nothing moves forward, nothing gets completed. You simply stand and let the night be what it is around you. But these pauses are not wasted. They are the moments when the self that does not have a role to perform gets to exist without performing. And that self, quieter, slower, less defined than the one that shows up to work and meets obligations and manages the day, is also you, possibly more essentially, you, in the way that things stripped of performance are more essentially themselves. The person standing here now is not the worker, not the reliable one, not the one who shows up and keeps things moving. That person is resting or trying to. The person here is simply the one who stands at windows at the end of days, holding cool cups, noticing the night. There is no audience for this version of yourself. There is no one keeping track of whether you stood here tonight, whether you felt whatever you felt, whether the window was cold or the city was quiet, or the thoughts were mostly nothing. This moment exists without witness, and perhaps that is part of what makes it feel both light and slightly heavy at the same time, the way certain freedoms do. The freedom of being unobserved carries its own weight, the weight of being entirely responsible for your own company, entirely outside the validating gaze of anyone who might confirm that you are fine, that the day was worth the effort, that standing here in the quiet is a reasonable thing to do, without needing to be told that it is. But knowing and feeling are separate countries, and tonight they are not quite sharing a border. The cool cup in your hands has become simply something you are holding. You stopped tasting it some time ago, the way you stop hearing background sounds without noticing the moment of stopping. The body attends to what is immediate and releases attention from what has become familiar. The cup is familiar now. The window is familiar. Even the feeling standing inside you has become a little familiar in the last few minutes. Not comfortable exactly, but known, which is different and perhaps sufficient. Outside, the street has grown quieter still. The intervals between cars have lengthened. Somewhere in the building, above or below or beside, a sound moves through the structure and is absorbed. The city is not sleeping. Cities do not sleep. But they shift into a lower register after a certain hour, and you have found that hour tonight without choosing to find it. The night is different at this hour. It asks nothing. It does not require your participation or your performance. It simply continues, as it always has, as it will when this particular evening has folded into the past and become simply another night among nights. You will not remember this window clearly. You will not remember the specific quality of this stillness or the exact texture of the thoughts that were not quite thoughts. Memory does not keep these moments in detail. They blur into a general impression of having been alive, of having stood somewhere quiet, of having felt something that was neither happiness nor sadness, but simply the sensation of existing inside a life that continues regardless. And still, this moment is happening, fully, quietly, without announcement. At some point you will turn away from the window, not because something calls you, nothing will call you. You will simply feel, gradually, that the standing has completed itself. The way the day completed itself earlier, without ceremony, releasing you into the evening without announcement. You will set the cup down somewhere, the counter, the table, wherever feels natural, and the room will receive you back into its ordinary quiet. The window will remain, holding the night on the other side of its glass, indifferent to whether you are standing at it or not. The city will continue its low, indifferent hum. The light across the way will stay dark or turn on or remain as it is, none of it contingent on whether you watched. This is what the window teaches without teaching anything, that the world outside continues fully regardless of your attention, that your standing here was for you only and entirely, not for the street, not for the night, not for anyone observing. It was a private act of being present inside your own life at the end of a day that asked a great deal and returned very little of what it took. Tomorrow will arrive with its alarm and its coffee and its sequence of small preparations performed in the same order they are always performed. The automatic parts of you will engage before the fully conscious parts are ready, which is how most mornings work, which is how most days begin. Not with intention, but with motion, one thing leading to the next, before you have had time to decide how you feel about any of it. But that is tomorrow. Right now there is still this. The window, the cool cup set aside, the room behind you that holds the quiet shapes of your evening, the thoughts that were mostly nothing, which was perhaps exactly what you needed them to be, the night outside still moving at its slow, unconcerned pace, and you standing here a moment longer, not because there is anything left to see, but because the stillness has been, in its own plain way, enough. You were present for it. That matters in ways that will not be measured and do not need to be. The window holds the dark. Somewhere in the building, a sound settles. The city carries on without you, and you stay a moment longer, which is all a moment like this has ever asked.